Greetings, programs. Welcome to episode number 39. Why conservatism rises when things are bad, and why is the left so queer? This was an idea I had a while ago, where if I didn't have a topic that could take up an entire chat, then I could stick two related ones together. But as it happened, as I got to writing, it ended up quite big. So one of these is fairly large, and the other one is the short addendum corollary. But really, the two things are related. So here's our talk for today. Not about politics exactly, but the why of politics. And yes, these two topics really are actually connected. It's less about what people are doing, and more about why they are doing it. So today's talk is going to lead into past vids, or talks that I've had, about the differences between conservative mindsets and liberal or even leftist mindsets. Now, if you've been paying attention, you will have noticed a trend in the world today. And one of those trends is people get more right-wing, or conservative, when things turn bad for them. Why? Why is that? Well, in many cases, the causality arrow is actually pointing the other way. Conservatives, as a group, have been around for ages, and have either caused the current issue or used it to rise to prominence. And then they start campaigning and convincing people, and thus making them more conservative. But not always. This is not all of the cases. So why does this happen? Well, as always, things become more clear when we examine what it is actually that we're talking about. So, what even is conservatism? Well, from Wikipedia, the central tenets of conservatism include tradition, organic society, hierarchy, authority, and property rights. But that just tells us what they think, or what it is that they declare. Who are they, these conservatives? Well, basically, conservatives are the aristocracy. Yep, that's right. These people descend from the aristocracy of old. Obviously not the ones that got their heads chopped off, but the others that didn't. See footnote number 1 for what even is conservatism. This is why conservatives are, by and large, rich. They are, or descend from, the landed gentry of the past. Or in countries without an aristocracy, they became the new aristocracy by being rich. Consider how people treat Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates in the US. They are the new aristocracy. And the conservative movement and ideology comes from there. Sure, conservatives talk a lot about the good old days and traditional family values, but those good old days, that was when they were unquestionably on top and no one argued about it. But hang on, we got rid of the aristocracy, right? I mean, the new world doesn't have any aristocrats, and in the old world they're just sort of decorative, or they got their heads cut off. We don't like aristocrats in charge of stuff, do we? Isn't that why we had those various revolutions of one form or another? Why would anybody vote for them, or whatever? Well, the answer is simple. Fear. Fear and stability. The comfort of the known, rather than the fear of the unknown. Most people fear instability instinctively. Most people have their lives in some sort of order. Things could be better, but things are, for the most part, okay. A big upending, chaos, well, all of that would be bad. Because while it might be that a big upset might make things better, it's a lot more likely, at least in most people's heads, that it will be worse than what is happening right now, the status quo. See footnote number 2 for details on loss aversion, to give this a more scientific flavour. Or, to put it another way, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. And that is pretty much the only draw card that conservatives have. We will make everything like it was, safe, when life was good, back in the day. That's a conservative thought. It's the only card that they have. And that is why conservatives in various places are always harping on about immigrants and jobs and change. But it's generally not true that things were good back in the day. See footnote number 3 for details called rosy retrospection. Yeah, there's science behind this. We really do think this stuff. Sure, things were good for some folks back in the day, but not minorities, not the poor, not for the most part. That having been said, in some respects, things were better back in the day. Back in the 60s and 70s, and ironically, things are worse now as a direct result of policies enacted by the people now promising that they can make it like it was. Just Google neoliberal economics, a favourite right-wing, or conservative, policy. And I'm not kidding when I say this is their only card. Everything that conservatives bang on about in various countries leads back to this one and only one thing. Responsibility? Why? Because irresponsible behaviour might lead to sudden changes. Tradition? That is a short way of saying, do it the way we always did. See above. Strong borders? They keep out the strangers who may change things. Hierarchy? Who's on top of that hierarchy? Authority? Who has the authority? Property rights? So who is it that has this property? Yep, all the same people, the conservatives. No shock that the people on top want to stay on top. This is one of the reasons that people become more conservative in outlook as they age and or get wealthier. They have more to lose from change or uncertainty, and are now part of the group that the conservative values are in favour of. It's one of the reasons you see actors and such becoming more right-wing as they become more successful and wealthier. Not all of them, by any means. Keanu Reeves, for example. But when you have the millions, you have a tendency to be in favour of policies that help you keep the millions. Now, of course, the conservatives themselves will never come out and say this stuff. That would not be good politics. And some of them may not even realise it. They may genuinely believe the stuff about tradition and stability, without wondering where it all leads, or why it is that tradition and stability are supposed to be valued, or who that tradition and stability actually helps. If you are on top of the heap, change is bad. There is nowhere to go but down. If you are not on top of the heap, you want change. Most of us do not want to be at the top. We'd mostly be happy not being at the bottom. So, why does this happen under stress? Well, this is why people cling to conservatism, or become more conservative in times of stress, because change is scary. And unless you're already at the bottom of the pile, you have a chance of falling further, no matter how bad your current situation may be. At least if you can stay where you are, you're not at the bottom. And who has been banging on constantly about order and stability the whole time? Conservatives. The party of allegedly playing it safe. Though, if you take a look at the actual policies, no matter what country or background you look at, they all have one focus. All of them. And that focus is protect and empower the upper class, almost universally by funneling more money to them or excluding everybody but the established wealthy. Tax breaks for the rich. Tax breaks for corporations, almost entirely owned by the rich. Barriers to entry for new businesses, thus favouring established or large businesses, who are owned by the rich. In the US, Citizens United, which allowed corporations to pay unlimited amounts to political parties, allowed them to skip that whole one-person, one-vote business and apply massive leverage to one side or one political party. But for all of that, they largely hope that no one will notice, and that they will be out of office by the time anyone spots it. But their big rallying cries are usually no government interference, and lower taxes, secure borders, deregulation, big military, safe, safe, safe. Let's ignore that the government interference and regulations they are complaining about usually exist to help the poor and working classes, and to stop companies poisoning the world. That those taxes go to services to help the lower classes that the rich do not need or want. The secure borders usually are a method to keep the lower classes looking outwards, not upwards, and that the military is a big money-making machine for those that make the weapons. So to sum up, people cling to conservatives when things go bad, because the conservatives promise safety and stability, but almost never deliver. But if they can lie and propagandize enough, maybe they can get into power or stay in power. Okay, so that's one half of the coin. Now for the other half of the coin. Why is the left so queer? And please note, I'm using the word queer here because the LGBT acronym, which does include me, by the way, I just find it clunky and awkward, and it keeps getting longer. The last time I saw it, it was literally 12 characters long, and that's just too much hassle. So I'm going to stick with queer. But anyway, what's that got to do with the left being queer, meaning gay, trans, or what have you? Well, first off, the left is not trans, and trans people are not all leftists. But there are more on the left, and if you run across a trans YouTuber, if they have any politics at all, they will almost certainly be left. Same goes for gay, bisexual, what have you. Go have a look on BreadTube, ContraPoints, ThoughtsLine, PhilosophyTube, Peter Coffin, H. Bomber Guy, Humanist Report. God, if you just go look, you'll probably find somebody who's not LGBT or GSM or queer, but you might have to look for a while. See footnote number 2 for queer YouTubers. Okay, so why is that? Well, if you remember way back when I discussed the Big 5 personality traits, things like liberal versus conservative thinking was largely based on a trait called openness to experience. See footnote number 5 for a wonderful presentation by Stephen Fry about liberal brains. But in short, if you are high in the psychological trait of openness, you are, stereotypically, accepting of the new and unusual. You are okay with fuzzy definitions and borders, both psychological, metaphysical, and national. You're also more accepting of other people, other foods and other lifestyles, and open to questioning assumptions. This means that you as a person with these traits are more likely to ask yourself questions like, am I really straight? What does it mean to be a man? Am I really a woman? And such like. It also means that if the answer to any of these questions leads to not being cis or not being straight, you are less likely to fight it and just go with it. It also means that you will typically be more comfortable with fuzzy concepts like gender fluid, non-binary, or just queer. Contrast this with conservatives, who only now can barely handle gay people, and then only because society has for the most part carved out a box to put them in, and mostly accepted gay people, in the West at least. This is why BreadTube is so queer. At least, this is why I think LeftTube is so queer. More open to questions. More okay with fuzzy definition. More open to examining our assumptions about stuff like gender and sex. More okay with discovering something unusual and just accepting it. And just generally more okay with being considered abnormal, different, or just a bit strange. Because we don't generally see those things as being bad, and thus have no reason to shy away from them. So, that's my explanation. This was going to be 2 small but related things, but one of them turned out to lead a lot of groundwork, and it made the other one smaller by comparison. Sure, there are gay and trans conservatives, but not many. And non-binary conservatives? Forget it. It's a good sign, really, that there are some gay or trans conservatives, because it shows that transgender and gay people have become mainstream enough to have some tiny level of acceptance among right-wingers. Though according to a 2015 US National Transgender Discrimination Survey, the most popular independent affiliations for transgender people were Socialist, Social Democrat, and Green Party. So clearly it's a thing. See footnote number 6 for the survey. So that's all for this week. Tune in next week for something else. Bye for now.